Rachel is from the School of Ma, and we were visiting her space with a couple of recursors last fall, and we did work on some generative art there. And then while we were preparing the conference, we got the idea, hey, I think Rachel would be a perfect keynote speaker for this conference because she's enthusiastic, she's making things, and she wants to share the word now. So yay. Looking forward to being bolder.
Thank you. Thank you. So hi, everybody. Thanks for being here so early this morning. And thanks to the organizers for inviting me to speak. So I originally was calling the talk Be Bold, but I figured some people here are probably pretty bold already, so I don't want to, hey, Liz. Okay, so I don't want to diminish anyone's boldness at this point, but I still will make the call that we should all be bolder. So my plan is to basically tell you a little bit about myself and my background and kind of how I've been like going through life and in the school, what I'm doing with the school, because I'm really excited about all these things, and then end with some thoughts I have about the future. So, I don't want to go there actually. So I want to go back here to me and Santa Claus. Whee! So I am from Texas originally. I asked my mom to send me a picture from childhood, and this is what she sent me. So basically, yeah, the memories are kind of blurry. It's kind of perfect. But actually, I had a really complicated childhood, which I think is totally a typical thing, you know, that happens to people. And so I was thinking about it, like actually the way that I dealt with it was to immerse myself in school activities. So for example, I played flute for 8 years in band, and I was editor of my school paper for 3 years, and president of the Key Club, and like just doing all these things. So part of the thing when I was working, or when I was doing the journalism, I would write about things like, I never confused you. Anyway, sorry, pointing out people, like thank you for people. Like it's good to recognize people in the crowd so you're not so scared, right? Right, not so scared. Anyway, so what was I saying? So yeah, so like when I was writing articles, for example, I would be writing something about homelessness, and so then I would go volunteer at the homeless shelter, or I volunteered at an AIDS hospice as well. I mean, I'm that old. It was like beginning of AIDS. That was a long time ago. I mean, do you remember the beginning, like back in the day? Anyway, but like, so I always felt like it's the obvious thing to want to help others, and especially when you know what it's like to be lost and need help. And so this has kind of always been a thing with me that I found easy. So anyway, then eventually I went away to college, and then I moved to Chicago, and I started working in audio after school, and then 9/11 happened, and Bush happened. Well, Bush happened first. Anyway, and so everybody was like, love it or leave it. And I thought, okay, I have to leave. I mean, it was just too overwhelming. So luckily I got a job offer in Germany, or in Berlin here. And I started to work at a loudspeaker manufacturing company doing testing and measurement of loudspeakers. And for me, this was kind of in the direction I was going because, audio, and then I wanted to design microphones, and everybody was buying these really expensive Neumann microphones. And I was like, oh my God, I should learn from the Germans. And so, Gesundheit. And so I, moved to Chicago. Moved to Berlin, and it was really interesting. Kind of around the time I came, there were all these protests all over Europe, actually, about protesting the U.S. government. And so I think it was, really interesting to be out of your country when the world is protesting your country. I think it's kind of a really interesting perspective on things. And so eventually the German government actually didn't give me permission to work here because they said there are enough unemployed Germans. And so I kind of had to not be working there anymore. And so, then I went to Italy for a little while, and I got into animation, and then I started to do compositing. And so then I worked in visual effects compositing for a little while. And then, of course, that's like an industry job, so I got burnt out of that as well. Didn't feel human because you're working like 18-hour days, and it's like exhausting. And so eventually I went and took a break in London for 6 months, and I and I bought an iPad, and then I was like, ooh, touchscreen. It was really exciting. And then I came back and I started to learn programming. So I was taking like all the classes I could find, like Objective-C classes. And then I found Open Tech School, and I was taking like Python and JavaScript and like basically everything I could find. And then finally some organizers from Open Tech School, which I guess, do most people know Open Tech School here? Okay. Yeah, it's basically a great group of people who are open sourcing learning materials and helping people how to code. And so anyway, so I started organizing with them, and then eventually I got tired of organizing. I was organizing workshops and meetups and also helping with conferences and things. And then I thought, like, I'm not actually interested in organizing. I want to make things. So I took a break. I went to New York, and I started to take this class at ITP camp at NYU. It was a 4-week program learning electronics and coding and things. It was really cool. And then I got accepted that same year to School for Poetic Computation in Brooklyn. And so that was also really brilliant. And after taking those 2 programs, I knew I wanted to do something similar back here in Berlin. So I came back, and then I started School of Machines, Making and Make-Believe in 2014. So at first I was really not sure what to name it. So a friend of mine and I made this script, and we were trying to like come up with ideas for names. So it could have been like Academy of Dream and Design or School of Magic and Making. I like the Lodge as well. Like, it made me think of Water Buffalo Lodge from the Flintstones, which was, I thought, pretty cool. But so anyway, then I started with 2 classes. One was focused on like responsive spaces and coding, and the other one was focused on physical computing and electronics. And so I was there like before everybody. I left after everyone. My health was really shit, actually, but you know, it's like you're like, I'm living the dream, but you're like holding your leg or like whatever, just like trying to survive it. And so eventually I did survive it, and oops, the thing fell off. Anyway, I survived it, and then I decided to do it again. So these are some of the pictures from the first class where we were working. Yeah, there's like a drawing robot, and we were doing like a little bit of computer vision and fabrication, and working with like projection mapping outside on buildings, and we did some VR stuff as well. And so then the next year I did 3 programs. So basically I'm looking at the school as like a big experiment, you know, like how do people learn best? What kinds of things are people, I don't know, just basically trying to do what I can to help humans and education. And so I realized that actually I could bring part of my activism, which I mentioned at the beginning, like into the school. And so I created a 10-week class called Interventions. And the idea was like exploring social practice and how to be like use more critical thinking when we're thinking about technology. And then I did a program called Fabricating Empathy, which was connecting human emotions in outer space. And then Facts and Fictions was all about data. It was intended to be about dataviz, but I had like the people from Dear Data come and teach. And so inevitably we did a lot of data art in that class, actually. And so here's some pictures from those programs. Like in the corner, there's this, it was Marina, she's an architect, and she was exploring the idea of working with cybernetics. And like in the future, we're not going to have to tell someone, hey, I like you, but you're just going to see the fluttering of our wing, or of our, you know, sensor floaty wings. And then, you know, you will know. Well, that's going to make it so much easier, right? Can't wait for that. And then someone documented their silences. So they, you know, walked around and like marked their silences and then made a data project out. Also, too, this was really cool, was like Melanie made this map of Berlin, and it was like all potatoes, but depending on the area, the neighborhood, like if it was a Polish neighborhood, the potatoes tasted more Polish, like with more Polish spices, or Russian or whatever. So that was also a really fun project to do with dataviz, or data art, making data art. And so anyway, next year I did 5 programs. So exploring virtual reality, Internet of Things, machine learning for artists, and then I did some workshops at the Influencers Conference in Barcelona. And so here's some of the images from those classes. I also did a 4-week program in Italy. And in this, you know, we were exploring speculative design and fabrication. And so this one woman made this project about, Monique, she made a project about that in the future, the way that we're going to control people is by kind of like tear gas. No, that basically it was empathy seeds. And so the idea was that people would become more empathetic, and also in other classes we did some more computer vision. And this project here was kind of, like in India, there are, I guess, quite heavy issues with people just grabbing you in public. And so Sukanya, who also went to Recurse Center, she was studying at School of Mod. She did this project based on like kind of like swatting these hands away from you. And then we also did like, Alice did this project with machine learning. So basically like when you're in jail, they have like this data collected of jail tattoos. And so they're really just descriptions of the jail tattoos, are not actually the images. And so she took this database and then fed it into this machine learning algorithm, then like that spit out these other tattoos that were kind of as if they were jail tattoos. And then she had a tattooer there and like at the exhibition, and she got herself tattooed, and other people did as well. And then I really like this one at the top. It was like, it was in the Italy class about, in the future, people are going to be so lazy that the trash can has to grow every time you throw something in. And so it had these motors, and it would like kind of raise up. And I like this, especially that one, because I think that, we think about Internet of Things and connected devices, and we're always trying to think like, okay, how can we, like do something with this stuff? But I think we're thinking too linear, and we need to think a little bit like, like his thing was like, what are humans going to be like in this environment where we're living with connected devices all over? So it's like, how are the humans going to adapt to that scenario? Not like, let me make a specific device that's connected, but like, what is the environment and how can I make something there? And then also, so I try to do a project in each of the classes as well, if I have time. And so this one was also, it was a collaboration with Sukanya. And so it was kind of like a play in 4 acts about relationships in collaboration with this machine learning algorithm. And so I hired actors as well. And so in the 4 acts, it was like a relationship between a man and a woman, a man and a computer, a woman and a computer, and then a computer and a computer, which, I mean, you can just barely see it there. But anyway, but it got me really excited as well about thinking about how performance kind of fits into this whole role of technology and like playing with it and working with it. And so anyway, the next year I did 8 classes. One of them was a research residency we did in Belgrade in Serbia for 4 weeks. And then 2 of them were online classes. And so, I mean, usually I'm trying to not repeat myself. So this was the first time I did a program that had anything to do with sound. And so, it's, yeah, I don't know. It's like, in a way it was like, you got like, after I stopped working in audio, was like, okay, like I'm not in, like, it's just like, you just completely go away from it. And then it's like, okay, I don't have to just abandon everything that I've been in my life. I can like bring it in a little bit because I still really, obviously who doesn't love music? Anyway, these are some of the projects from there. Or from this year. So we had exploring like breath as a cryptocurrency, and this one was really fun on the bottom. So basically at the beginning of the class, so like the way I would approach things is kind of like, for example, when we're talking about virtual reality. So I think that for teaching virtual reality, you don't start with coding, but I think you start with like, what is an experience? So what, like creating an experience. And so we gave the students an assignment, so create an experience for people. And so this was a really fun game, which I think we could maybe try here if some people have like sunglasses. So you have sunglasses and you see the reflection, and you have a person that is holding the head of the person with the sunglasses, and then you have a person behind that has the controller. And so basically the idea is that you always want to keep the umbrella in the vision of the, inside of the sunglass place. And it was really interesting because I did both roles, and I noticed that there's this moment, like at first you're like, oh my God, this is a human head, I don't want to hurt them, but then all of a sudden you're like, you move from like that to like, oh, this is a game and I'm gonna win, so you're just like, you're like just twisting them and turning them to try to get this thing inside. And so it was really interesting to, at first you're like, oh my God, this is human, and then it just becomes an object, that like how it just switches without like consciously thinking about it. And so we have like in the middle, this is a protest that happened. There were like elections in Serbia at the time when we were there. And so that was kind of like a really interesting thing to be out of the country again and like seeing a country at odds with government. This project in the corner was one that I did. So I did one project where I dressed up in one of these, I forget what you call those suits, but it's like basically a morph suit, yeah. I never would have thought I would do that, you know, like why would I put on a morph suit? But the thing is that actually what I wanted to do was explore the idea of communication and how difficult it is to communicate with other humans because it's just difficult, right? So the idea was that like people would, I was like sitting on a chair and people would come in and I would be talking to them and it sounded like wah, 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 like kind of like with the Snoopy thing. I have a lot of comic references. Anyway, so like, and then they would come closer and I would invite them to get into the bed with me and we would hold hands and have a conversation about intimacy. And like when they put the headphones on, they could hear me clearly. So, and so, yeah, I think it's like, you know, like it's about the idea that we want to create, not about like the technology or the whatever, you know, I think we can do a lot of things if we just get excited about ideas. So 2018, so that's this year, I'm doing 5 classes and focusing on, well, I mean, I kind of was thinking about this in a way because, you know, like it's really frustrating when you want to be creative and you have no time because you're working all the time. And so as much as I want to be able to make something in every class, I don't get to. And then it becomes really frustrating because you see everybody doing cool stuff and you're like, I have to work. And so anyway, I started to kind of look at the classes themselves in a way as like this art project for myself. And so like the way that I'm looking at these classes this year, I was thinking about it and it's kind of like poetics of the learning experience or something like that. So like with the ecoacoustics class, we're basically studying like the body and hearing and senses and perception and thinking and like sound and space. And so it's almost as if like we're like starting from like being born, you know, and just like kind of coming out or even being in the womb still and then kind of coming out and like resurrecting ourselves and exploring what life is when the senses are the focus of the world. And then the next class is it's called reality, ? And it's about, you know, so at the same time that we're going to explore augmented reality, we're also, like, I think it's really important to know what the hell this reality is, you know? It's like, it's so easy to just think about, oh, let's work with the technology or whatever, but what is this experience for us that we never talk about? So I really tried to, like, that's really a main focus is to like not just focus on technology, but also the human aspects and like what we're doing with this technology and why. And so then the next class is experimenting with experimental games and physical computing, but so thinking about like play as a part of a healthy new society and what that might look like. And also how traditional games are, you know, about winners and losers and how has that affected us. I think, you know, we're also competitive and you don't really know why, but it's like, well, we grew up playing these like hardcore games, you know, and like, I don't know, I think that kind of seeps in a little bit, but anyway, then the next class is thinking about augmented reality, machine learning and AI in terms of this autonomous generative spirit. So this kind of like collective spiritual entity. And what does that even mean? Like, you know, in the context of this technology. And then there's the first year I'm trying to go really far away, which is to China. And so then the idea is that we would spend 2 weeks in Shanghai, 2 weeks in Shenzhen, creating like basically kind of like doing research on what the future might look like from a non-Western perspective, and then creating devices that we can manufacture at the end. So research and prototyping is really the next phase of what I want to do with the school, to kind of use it, you know, I want to run these classes, but at the same time, I want to understand and prototype future societies because, well, I think I'm probably going to get into that in a second. But so one of the things that I looked at is that NASA and the European Space Agency, for example, do these simulations where they have people living off on their own for like up to a year or something, and like trying to emulate the experience of living on Mars. And they all seem really bored. I don't know if anybody's seen those videos about these things. I mean, it's really interesting, but they all seem so bored. And I'm like, why don't you just like learn things? You know, it's like you're not dead. You could still learn it. You know, I don't know. I feel like someone should tell these people like that's maybe like an idea for like making people not so going insane. But so anyway, so I think that the idea is, you know, like if there's a revolution tomorrow, what's our plan? I don't think we really have a plan. And so this is kind of the idea with prototyping future societies is like, we kind of need a plan, I think. It's like it keeps failing over and over. And so when are we going to learn from it? Well, ideally, when we start working on a new plan, then things will get better. So, and then here's some pictures from, anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, thoughts on the future. So now I basically have, actually, how much time do I have? Do you know?
You're fine.
Oh, okay.
Almost half an hour.
Oh, okay. So, well, anyway, so thoughts on the future. Basically, I wanted to tell you, okay, so these are just kind of like a little bit of some random thoughts that I've been having about the world in general. And I don't know, I guess I just want to tell you, like I was thinking also too about how many things we make at home that nobody ever sees, which is kind of strange. And so I don't know, I thought like just putting these ideas out there, maybe because I really want to change society. I don't know, the world, something, do something while I'm here. So if any of these ideas could be interesting for you or you've been thinking about them too, please come to me afterwards or anytime, get in touch and I'm happy to discuss. So the first one is new society. So I think 2 years ago, I was thinking, I need to find funding for the school actually, because that would make things easier. Funding always makes things easier, right? Go funding, yay funding. If you have funding, feel free to see me afterwards too. But anyway, so then I was applying for this fellowship and I was, my intention was obviously to apply in terms of like education and technology and things. But then I was like, I think it's time for a new society. It's like at the time, I don't know. It's just like all these years, there's always a time to have a problem with what the government is doing, like all governments are doing. And so I just thought, it's time for a new society. Clearly, like governments and corporations have proven time and again that they're not looking out for us. So we need to find ways to look out for each other. And so obviously I didn't get that fellowship, but I was really excited by the idea that I even stayed up all night, like with no sleep and why? Because I believe in a new society. I thought that was like proof of my conviction. And so then shortly afterwards, I was talking with Martin, Open Tech School Martin, and it's like easy to get into debates. Like we never see eye to eye, but like this was actually a good one because basically I was talking about this idea of like parallel societies and we need new societies. And then I came to the conclusion basically while talking with him that what I'm actually interested in is this idea of a perpendicular society. So, we can think of it as like, this is society the way it is now. And it's like, we don't, like, especially the people in this room, like we are really interested in technology and we're really excited about what's coming in the future, at least for myself. I never want to die because I just want to keep seeing what's going, how this technology thing is going to play out. But so the idea of the perpendicular society is that you kind of tap off from the infrastructure that's already here because we're not going to create our own, I keep saying Deutsche Telekom. I don't know why. Are they evil? Like especially evil? But they're the ones that come to mind. But so we're not going to create our own, like Deutsche Telekom. And so, and so this is why we're going to use the infrastructure. So we're kind of like, touching here, but then we're creating our whole own new things. Because I don't know if any activists here who've protested and screamed and like cried and like, okay, like, yeah, okay. So, it's just like, I just realized like how much of my life I've given towards the cause of activism and like screaming at, police, like they're right here and you're there and you're screaming as if like, you're just expressing your soul and they're ignoring you. And like, they don't really, it's just, I'm tired of fighting for a thing that's never going to change. And I want to rather create something new when we just go in a different direction and then everyone will see how amazing it is, this new world we've created, this new society, and then they will just want to join us, right? Like that sounds like a logical plan, right? So anyway, so now I'm kind of telling you linearly, like these are the thoughts, like this is kind of how my brain was working recently. So I was thinking about, perpendicular society, and then I saw a documentary about jazz called 1959. I don't know if anybody's seen this documentary. It's on YouTube. You should check it out. It's really great. So I was really excited about jazz recently, and because I played instruments, and I always kind of dreamed of like playing sax and trumpet someday in the future. And so whatever, I was like getting into jazz and watching a bunch of documentaries, and I found this one called 1959. And so basically what it was talking about was in 1959, Dizzy Gillespie and big band was kind of the way that jazz was. And then 4 albums came out in this year that tried to say, this is the new direction that jazz should go into. I think it was like Charles Mingus, Miles Davis, Dave Brubeck, and Ornette Coleman. And I just thought that was so fascinating. And then I was thinking like, oh my God, it's like right now it's 1959 and it's our chance to figure out which direction jazz should go. So I was like, this is exactly, you know, it's like playing out again. So it was like history repeating itself. But also I was thinking that maybe jazz is the missing link when thinking or rethinking about technology, because, you know, for example, with AI, you know, they're trying to emulate what it is to be human. And I think, you know, how many people really know what it is to be human? You know, everybody's ignoring being human because they're thinking about technology, or they're thinking about their hair, or they're thinking about like just other things that don't matter. And, you know, and so I feel like this is a thing with like technology that like, it just has no soul at the moment. And so maybe, you know, like, because when I was watching this documentary, people were talking about these jazz solos, you know, for example, like, you know, these solos where you could hear the soul of the person that was playing them just completely, they were completely expressing everything about, you know, their humanity. And I just think like, oh, wow, that like, you know, maybe some of that, I don't know. So, you know, if anybody has ideas about this, I would love to discuss this as well, because I think, I mean, obviously, yeah, it's like, I think it's totally a thing. And so then after I was thinking that, and I was already thinking like, okay, there's at least 4 new ways we can go. Then I discovered Yuval Noah Harari. I don't know if anybody knows him. He's an author and a historian from Israel, and he wrote Sapiens and Homo Deus, which are 2 really fascinating books that came out in the last several years. They're really thick though, so it's like you gotta, I don't know, have patience, time, I don't know, all of it. But anyway, so, but you can also watch his talks on YouTube because they're fascinating and maybe it's quicker. But so basically the thing is that he's saying that the difference between humans and animals, for example, is the fact that we can listen to and believe in each other's stories. And so basically what he's saying is also that everything that we know is made up. So religions, politics, you know, like just all of the systems that we live by and know are made up. And so the idea is that, like, let's make up the news stories. And so, you know, this was, I mean, it was basically just like a confirmation to me that I was thinking about, like, you know, all these things are making sense. And I think that a lot of times we think that, like, oh, the world is basically figured out, so I'm just going to, I don't know, live my life within this world that's all figured out. And then, you know, I'm like, I don't know, but like actually there's so much of the world that isn't figured out. You know, like neuroscientists still have like big giant holes in their gaps in knowledge of what how the brain functions. And also 90% of the known universe is made up of dark matter, which nobody's ever seen. And, you know, we can't even verify that it really exists. It just fits with the math. So it's just like everything is confirming that like there's so many things, so many new ways that we can go. And I was thinking about this, like, you know, like I feel like back in the day, we've always been taught to like focus on one thing, you know, like, I don't know if we were going to become like a doctor or a scientist or lawyer, you know, all the big things that the parents want you to become. And like, and so the thing is, so say I'm like a biologist and I'm spending my entire, like all my life, just like biology, oh my God. And I'm just like looking here, well, that basically means that everyone else has to fill in the blanks for what everything else means. So I think this is how, you know, politics goes in the wrong way, how things like Trump happen, because there are people who are not thinking for themselves. They're like, no, but science. And I'm like, and so, you know, and then someone's like, you know, well, it's time to vote, you know, Trump, like he's going to save us money. And they're like, okay, I don't know. And so, and I think this is obviously the wrong way to go. And so that we have to start kind of informing ourselves about what's going on. And so I feel like everyone is kind of looking outwards for something to save us, like a politician or a platform device app. I don't know, maybe some of you are working on some of these magical things that are that are going to be designed to save us. But actually, I think technology is not going to save us. And that while human advancement of an achievement in technology and science is really brilliant, it's not the point of life. You know, it's like, it's cool, it's interesting, it's fascinating, but it's not the point of life. I think being alive is the point of being alive. So like, being, you know, I don't know, like this idea of like really being there, you know, it's like when you're eating your food, like how many of you watch TV on on the internet, or, you know, like watch the internet while you're eating. It's like, yeah, but it's like, so we are not here. And I know that a lot of the things, you know, maybe kind of sound like hippie, cheesy or whatever, but this stuff is real. You know, they're talking about this for reasons. And so I think that, like, instead of actually going outside for things to fix us, that we actually have to go inside and like be curious about ourselves. You know, it's like, why do I behave like this when this person's around? Or like, what is my motivation for doing the things that I do? And what have I survived over the years that I can be proud of? And like, you know, because I think that it's difficult to be human, and the fact that we're all here and we're still alive is kind of a huge feat that we don't give ourselves credit for. And I don't know, high five peeps, like seriously, like, so I think it's really good to know what we don't know, because then we can go and learn the things that we don't know, and then maybe make art about the things that we don't know to try to figure out what it is about them that we're even curious about. And so, for example, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking like right now, I don't know anything about how my body works. Like, to be honest, I've just been able to ignore biology for the most part and still somehow survive thus far. And so I think like the next thing I want, especially when as we're getting older, it's like, oh my God, I need to know how this works, because I need to protect it from all the things. So anyway, I have this idea, like another movement idea that I would like to see in the world. It's basically called the Get Your Shit Together movement. And the idea is essentially that we get our shit together. It's like we all have the responsibility to get our own shit together. So I'm going to get my shit, it's like, I'm going to get my shit together so we can be friends, because you're going to get your shit together too, for example, and you're going to get your shit. And so like, we're going to meet at the place where we're actually have our shit together, as opposed to like that we go up to other people and like say, save me or heal me, or I can't. And like, I don't know. I think it's like, there's this kind of myth that we're going to meet these magical people that are going to kind of like, I don't know, like heal the things inside. And it doesn't really work that way. It's like, we have to heal ourselves and then present that to the world. And I know it's tough, but I also know that it's possible. And I think that it's important to remember, because there are a lot of times where we're up against other people that we maybe think we hate, or like that are just like, you know, like politicians or people who are frustrating. But I think it's important to remember we've all been told different lies. So, you know, for example, when I would meet, back in the day when I would meet a Bush supporter, immediately I hated them. And I would get into this, I would be angry, you know, those angry anarchists who's like, oh yeah, you like Bush, well, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like go off. And like, and the thing I realized is like, when we hate other people, you know, that wasn't affecting Bush, that was affecting me. It was like, you know, this feeling when you're like, upset and angry and whatever, and there's nothing you can do about it except feel it, then it's painful. And so like I think learning to let go is really important. And also, again, just realizing it's not their fault for being Bush supporters. It's like the only thing they know because of their family and their family's family and their culture, their society, their community, whatever. So and I think that like, so just realized that I haven't been talking. Oh shit, sorry everybody. Hope you could hear me. Anyway, so that like the reason that we're becoming better humans is because we want to have a better world. And I think, you know, it's like we're like, some of us are thinking about the environment, or like, you know, we have our issue in the world that we're trying to fight for, but actually us being better humans ourselves is going to make the world a better place, because that, you know, like it just is trust me. Or we could talk about it as well. I'm happy to debate. But so I think that like it's possible also, like knowing ourselves, knowing what we're capable of, and then seeing where the gaps are in society and like how we want to help fill it. So I think that it's possible that we might need to also think about things we never would have thought we would do. Like maybe we need to be the weapons manufacturer that we need to see in the world, because, you know, for example, in the US, it is this, you know, this crazy like shoot to kill thing. You know, I feel like back when I was young, you know, you would hear about a cop shooting somebody, and they would shoot him in the leg or something. They would go to the hospital, they would be healed, then, you know, they would like have a trial or whatever. And now they just shoot to kill, and it is fucking insane. I don't understand it. And so it's like, maybe, you know, there's an issue with the weapons and like, and how people are using them. And maybe we need to make something new, you know, that's like, you know, that no one has ever thought of, and maybe that will be the thing. So like, I think that there are things that we possibly have not thought of yet that could be the direction we should go in, but like knowing yourself helps you to understand what place in the world you can fill. I think I want to start concluding by saying that the world has not been figured out yet, and that we can still have a say in what the future will look like. And I really, really believe this. So let's all be a little bit bolder and get to work. Thank you.